Hello, Spider. I brought a few pieces of Iceland back with me. So, I'm here to discuss my trip to Iceland. How am I going to put this? No. There we go. I'm here to discuss my trip to Iceland from the point of view of someone who is disabled. Quiet flag, this is not your show. Um, and just sort of give you my view on like travel to that particular country if you're considering like traveling there, some things to keep in mind. Because when I looked at a lot of travel blogs before I went to Iceland, and they all said the same thing. But none of them said some of the things that I sort of discovered while I was there. So I wanted to do my own travel advice thing from the point of view of someone who is disabled, so that you can consider that, but also just from the point of view of someone who's going there as a tourist for the first time. So I made some notes in my notebook, and I thought I'd do this as like the good, the bad, the ugly, and then the weird, like things that are like, well, isn't that strange? So let's start with the good, okay? Right, one, the water in Iceland is the most unbelievable thing you will ever drink in your entire life. It's so hard to describe because it's just so pure and clean and beautiful. Like, I quite like the tap water in England. I think it's like a perfectly fine drinking water, particularly when it's colder. And I was blown away by the drinking water, the tap water in Iceland, because it's so amazing. It tastes so nice. There's no like limestone in Iceland, which we have a lot of in England, which is why like our kettles have like lime scale problems, because of the lime scale build up. This flag wants to be in it far too much. But in Iceland, there's no lime scale, so it just filters through the volcanic rock, and it's just incredible. Like, it's pretty much all I drank the entire time I was there was just water, because apart from apart from when I was doing the trying the Icelandic pop and stuff videos, like the water was just so nice. It's so hard to describe, but it was beautiful. It was so good. Yeah, Icelandic water is just amazing tasting. It really is. Um, Another thing that's really great is the cleanliness of the city, the country in general. I went to Reykjavik, so I can really only particularly speak on Keflavik, where the airport is, and then the road travelling between there and Reykjavik. Um, it's so clean. It is such a clean country. Like, if you walk down the street in Britain, you might look around and you might see like fag ends and crisp packets and fruit shoot bottles and like bus tickets and receipts and plastic bags and all sorts of rubbish, right? Even though like we went through a massive campaign of like keep Britain tidy, we're not doing a great job on that. Um, in Reykjavik, they take it very seriously. Like, hardly anything on the street at all. Like, if I think if I did see anything, it was probably dropped by a tourist. Um, it's so clean there. It's a sight to behold, and I really wish that like our country took that cleanliness more seriously, because they really do that, and they're very tight on recycling as well. Like, the room had recycling bins, so you could put like plastic bottles in one and paper in another and general waste in another. They're very good at that, so top marks. The good news is that about 90% of the people there speak absolutely perfect and fluent English. Now, I did go to the trouble of learning Icelandic before I went out there, because I think it's only polite that if you're going to a country where English is not the spoken language, that you make at least an attempt to learn words in Icelandic. Like, minimum, absolute minimum, if you're going to a country where they don't speak English, you should learn yes, no, please, thank you, hello, goodbye. 6 words. Like, it's not that hard to learn 6 new words. And it's at least it's putting an effort into it. And I have typically found that where you go somewhere where the English isn't the first language and you've made the effort to learn, then people are very appreciative of that. So, like, I learned a fair bit about. I've learned about 300 words of Icelandic, and it's an extremely hard language to learn. But 6 words isn't that hard in the grand scheme of things. But everyone, pretty much, who is Icelandic, speaks English fluently. In fact, like many a time, you would find Icelandic people speaking to each other in English. Um, People who don't speak fluent English are people who might have immigrated there themselves. So there was, for example, the bus driver on our bus, Mr. Vasily, was a Romanian. So he could speak a bit English and he could speak Icelandic and he could speak Romanian. But his English wasn't as great as the travel rep that we had, Glumer, and the other one, Olan. They were speaking to each other in English, even though they were both Icelandic. But Mr. Vasily, his English wasn't as good because he was Romanian. And that's totally understandable, but it's also why you should make an effort to learn some of that native language, because not everybody who is in a country is going to speak English if that's not the native language, if they're not natives. There are plenty of people who are immigrants in England who are originally from places like Romania, Poland, Pakistan, India, Spain, France, and their native language is their native language, and then they speak English because that's the country that they've migrated into. So, like, learn a bit of the basic language of the country that you're going to is what I'm trying to say. But most people do speak English there, but it's only polite, I think, to learn some Icelandic. The country is beautiful. It is stunning, stunningly gorgeous. It's so unique. Reykjavik itself is very easy to walk around. It's a little bit like there's a grid system, which makes things really easy to navigate. And in a lot of high traffic tourist areas, you'll find stands that have free city maps. Every hotel has a city map, has several city maps actually that you can just take. And you can find these stands all over the city. And that's really helpful because they're not just marked with things like this is where this museum is and this is where that landmark is. There's also things on it like the most popular hot dog stand that we never found, even though we had a map. It's a really good map system, and they're free. And they do have a decent public transport system. The strætós, the buses, are pretty easy to navigate as well. They take you all over the place. It's probably the cheapest way to travel. My mother went to Blue Lagoon on her own. She was going to go in a taxi and then she decided to take the bus, and she found navigating the bus really easy. And people were really willing to help her because they recognised that she was a tourist. So they were like, this is the stand that you need and you need to go over there. So, like, people in the city are very friendly as well. But we need to talk about the bad things. And one of the bad things, even though it's a very, very clean city, the bins are overflowing a bit. I don't know how often the rubbish is collected in the city, but it's not frequently enough, because often you would see bins that were like really stuffed with rubbish. Now, you wouldn't see rubbish anywhere else, but you would see it around the bins. And I was like, pull yourself together a bit, Reykjavik, because that's letting you down there. That's letting you down that you've got all these bins that are sort of stuffed with rubbish. And I don't know if that's because it's such a clean city in general, they don't feel the need to collect the bins. But I think if you've got, yeah, that's your capital city, there's a lot of tourists, collect the rubbish more often. I think that, for me, that was a negative. Um, but the ugly. Oh, thank you. I did not know that. Somebody has just said on the live chat there's a strike at the minute, and that's why the bins weren't collected. I wasn't aware of that. But thank you for letting me know. That's actually really helpful to know. So the ugly, like, and there's only one point on the ugly, and that is lack of accessibility. As someone who is disabled and uses a mobility device to get around, there are lots and lots of shops where you just cannot get in the building if you're disabled. It's just impossible. Now, the punk museum that I went to visit is in a former toilet. And I chose to go there knowing that there was stairs, because I knew that it was a former toilet, and I knew actually it was a very small museum. I wouldn't need my mobility device to get around in the museum because it was essentially a tiny, little tiny room. And it wouldn't be a massive problem, and I could take my time coming back up the stairs. And luckily my mobility device did not get stolen, because we've got a very low crime rate in Reykjavik. So I wasn't expecting it to be stolen anyway, but I kind of think that because of the way it's decorated, people may have thought it was part of the museum. But anyway, I took my time going down the stairs. I really, really wanted to see the Punk Museum. So it took me about 5 solid minutes to get down this little set of stairs. And then it took me about 15 minutes to get back up them again. But, like, I don't blame the Punk Museum for not having a ramp, because it's a former toilet. It's literally a former toilet. But there are buildings that are clearly new, as in built within the last 20 years, and it's all steps. And for example, we went to the old harbour to go whale watching, and there was a lovely little coffee shop. And I really struggled to get into the coffee shop because they had 2 entrances. The first entrance was step, and it was like step, 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 step. And then they had a ramp inside, which is not very handy if you don't have a ramp outside. But they did have a ramp on the other door. The other door had a ramp, but the other door was locked and closed off, and you couldn't enter via the other door, which is super annoying if you're trying to hump a mobility device over stairs, let me tell you. So it's very easy to get a portable ramp these days, especially if you're part of the European Union, Iceland, which we're not anymore in Britain, but there you go. Yeah, you can get a portable ramp that you can put out to help disabled customers in, and you can have like a little, you can put like a sticker in the window saying like, we have a portable ramp, even though if you've like your main entrance is stairs, and that makes things more welcoming for people like myself who have disabilities, who the amount of shops I wanted to go and look in but physically couldn't, because I couldn't get my mobility device up the stairs, and I couldn't leave it on the street because that would be blocking half the street with my mobility device. It wouldn't be safe to leave outside for other people, and it certainly it wouldn't be practical. And also there's the worry of things getting stolen. Even though I know it's a very, very low crime rate there, you do worry about it still. So yeah, that is my one truly negative thing to say about Reykjavik, which is that mobility access is not great. But there are lots of things that could be done to improve on the places where it's like it's not accessible. Like, for example, if you've got a ramp next to your door, don't block off the door. Very simple. Or if that's not possible, if it's like an older building, it's not possible to install the ramp, get a temporary ramp so that someone can bring that out so that like customers can come in. Because tell you what, right? It is expensive in Iceland, and everyone will tell you that before you go. It is incredibly expensive. So you don't want to lose out on potential sales because disabled people have money. This is true. And I had a lot of money that I wanted to spend in shops that I couldn't go into. So I spent them in other shops that I could get into. There was one shop, and it didn't have a name, so I can't tell you the name of the shop, but it was just down the street from the Punk Museum. And the gentleman in there was so, so nice. The, this comes under a weird thing, but I'm going to bring it up now because I'm going to transition into the weird. Transitioning into the weird. Some people are very weird with you if you try and speak Icelandic. Like, some people react like, why are you trying to speak Icelandic? We've learned English. Why are you speaking Icelandic? I'm like, I tried to learn Icelandic, and some people were really funny about it. Like, really weird that like I was trying to speak Icelandic with them. But this one particular gentleman in the shop, he was so nice, and he could tell that like I tried to learn some basic Icelandic to speak to him, and he like appreciated it so much. He was so happy. And one of the things that I bought in his shop was a little troll figure, because like they're big into what's called hidden people in Iceland. It's part of their folk tales, like trolls and elves and little things. And I bought a little troll, and the truth was, right, I couldn't see the trolls because I was sitting down, I was on my mobility device, they were a bit blocked from where I was sitting, so I just said to the man, you choose one for me, you choose one for me. And he was like in a real dilemma about it, bless him. He was like, oh, this is a big responsibility choosing one for you. Oh, I don't know which one to choose. But he chose a troll for me, and I really like it, and it's on my like shelf now, and it's so cute, and I'm really happy with the one that he chose for me. But he was so nice and he was so lovely. He gave me a little chocolate coin, and he was like, this is for you, this is a present, like, welcome to Iceland. And you know, I was like, tack tack, and he said, oh, tack tack, bless bless, and that was really lovely. But some people were really funny with me for trying to speak Icelandic. Like, for example, when I went to the Phallus Museum, where the Chinky Winkles are, and I was trying to ask for a ticket in Icelandic. The bloke at the desk, I was like, ein finn some legast, and he was like, what, you want one ticket? Yeah. And he's like, is that a yes? I'm like, yes, yes it was. I'm trying to speak your language, don't shame me. So that was a bit weird. And that happened a few times with a few different places. I'm trying to speak in Icelandic. I'm like pointing to something and saying like mielikar. Or like some of the chocolate bars, I could actually pronounce the names. And I was like, mielikar vitlekutter. And they're just looking at me like, what are you saying? What are you saying, you weird touristy person? So yeah, that was it was odd. It was definitely odd. Another odd thing about Iceland, particularly being British, is the lack of trees. Now, I heard this said several times to me, but there was a saying apparently in Iceland that if you get lost in an Icelandic forest, you just have to stand up, because they don't have Icelandic forests. They have very few trees. They can only really grow like conifers and birches, and they don't have that many because it's volcanic soil, so not much can grow. And because there's a lack of trees, there's a lack of birds. And you don't really notice it at first, but once you do notice it, it's very strange. Particularly being British, like the tagline for Britain is the green and pleasant land. It's green all year round in Britain because grass doesn't die. And we have lots of evergreens and like both bushes and trees and plants that just, they stay green all year round. They don't die in winter. So seeing it being so, I don't know if barren is the right word, but you just like lava fields covered in snow and no trees and then no birds. We saw like a few gulls that are apparently relatives of the albatross, at the harbour, but not many of them at all. And I live close-ish to the coast, so there's a lot of seagulls, like, in my town, and I hate seagulls because they're noisy and dirty and they peck at our rubbish bags. And pigeons, can't move for pigeons here. Not a single pigeon was seen in Iceland. I don't know if they have pigeons. I saw these albatross type birds. I saw some smaller birds, which may have been sparrows or they could have been swallows, but I'm really not sure because I didn't get a good look at them because they were far away. And then I saw some like ravens, and that was it. Like, so there was like no birds because of the lack of trees, there's a lack of insects and there's a lack of material for building nests. So I have really, like, it is a very odd thing, very odd to experience when you're used to the sound of birds and greenery and other things. And another thing that was very strange are the opening times. Nothing opens until like 11. Now, the museum opened at 10, but most of the shops don't open until 11. I don't know what they're doing between, like, most shops in Britain, if like it's on the high street, will open at maybe 8. Some shops open at 7. Some of the bigger shops don't open until 9, and that's considered like a later opening in Britain. So the fact that the shops didn't open until 11 was weird. Apart from the 10-11, which is open 24 hours, which was the convenience shop that was on the corner from our hotel, which was called the 10-11. I don't know why it's called that, but it's open 24 hours. Like, apart from that, everything sort of opens around 11. But then it's not like the shops are open later. They still shut around like 5-6 o'clock. So that's very odd. Coming from Britain and going to there, and everything's shut on a Sunday, but we weren't there on a Sunday. I just noticed on the signs that things were shut on a Sunday. But yeah, that's another odd thing about Iceland. The other odd thing that you will hear in every other travel blog will be that the hot water smells of rotten eggs because it's naturally heated through the thermal stuff, like, so it smells of sulfur, but it's like naturally occurring hot water, and it's free for people. And like the hot showers, oh, amazing. But yeah, so as a disabled person going to Iceland, you need to be prepared for not being able to get into places if you don't have anyone with you. I like my independence. I like to go around the shops on my own. I don't want to be with my mother 24/7, because even though we went together, we only really did the whale watching together, and everything else we did sort of independently, really. But yeah, so unless you've got someone with you that maybe can lift your mobility device, you're not going to be able to get into all the buildings. Like, I couldn't get into the Culture Museum. That was just not going to happen because of like how the building was made. The thing is, though, I think they could totally easily add an accessibility ramp there very easily. I don't think the building's particularly old, so it wouldn't be like interfering with anything being listed or anything, but I think that's something that they could do. And that would be nice to be able to go into the Culture Museum. I didn't get time to go to the Saga Museum, but then I didn't find it until like the last day, and we only technically had 2 days. Another thing to consider is if, like me, you have a mobility device that is wheeled, that you look into adapting your wheels for snow. You see, in the city itself, there's very little snow on the paths. It's usually sort of towards the edge, but car parks are like compacted ice, and some areas are just like, particularly near the bay, are just covered in ice and snow. You cannot wheel a mobility device on them. So like if you have a wheelchair, if like me you have a roller tour, you're gonna struggle unless you've got winter adapted wheels. I wouldn't recommend taking a scooter, like an electronic wheelchair scooter thing, mobility scooter. I wouldn't recommend taking one of them. I don't think it's going to be a good idea. if you're completely dependent on like a wheelchair and you use an electric wheelchair, I would consider traveling with a companion who can push you in a regular wheelchair, because you are going to struggle getting around in the city on your own if you're going to certain places. It's not everywhere. There are plenty of places that are adapted, and I made a personal point of going into every shop that had a ramp, and trying to buy something, if I could, just because I felt it was really important to support the businesses that had ramps there. But yeah, so Iceland is it's a beautiful country. If English is your first language, you're gonna get on fine there. It is expensive, but you should basically do what me and my mother did, which is that we went to the 10-11, and I bought, like, because we were only technically there 2 full days. Went on the Monday, but we were delayed getting there, so we didn't really get there till the evening time. Then we had a full Tuesday, a full Wednesday, and then we came back first thing Thursday morning. But when I went to the 10-11, I bought like a half loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter and some little packets of butter. So let me just, in Icelandic for you, brauð, smjör, jarðnettersmjör. And I made myself peanut butter sandwiches in the room. Yes, I'm British, and I put butter on peanut butter sandwiches. It's too dry otherwise. So yeah, like, I just made myself some peanut butter sandwiches. I had some crisps. I had some, like, various chocolate bars and sweeties and things. And then, like, we ate out 3 meals, I think it was. We went to a chip shop on the first evening because it was just easier. Um, and we got some chips, which were quite nice. We went to the Hard Rock Cafe for a meal, which was amazing. Cannot recommend highly enough the Hard Rock Cafe in Reykjavik. The staff were fantastic. They were so hardworking. They were run off their feet, but they worked their darndest to get around every single table as fast as they possibly could. They were amazing. And then the third place that we ate out, I'm gonna totally butcher the name here because I didn't write it down, but I think it was called, like, At the Taku. And it was like it was opposite our hotel. Opposite our hotel, we had a Domino's, and then we had this other place, and they did like burgers and chips and things. And so, like, my mum said, I'm gonna go get a burger. Do you want one? I said, yes, get me a burger. And she went and she got it, and it was very nice. If it was very salty, so I'm not entirely sure if it was actually a beef burger or a lamb burger. Because as a rule, I don't eat lamb, so I'm not really sure. Because I don't eat anything that's cute. So I don't eat lamb, I don't eat duck, and I don't eat rabbit. Um, but yeah, but it was very salty. But I like my food quite salty, so it was just interesting for me to notice that. Oh no, my flag's fallen down. To notice how it was, but yes. So altogether, Reykjavik, Iceland, is a lovely, lovely place to go. I would love to go there for longer so that I could see more. I know some people would love to do like that road trip around Iceland. I wouldn't, because I get motion sickness very badly, and I was so ill on the boat that oh, it was very bad when we went whale watching. But yeah, I would find a trip that involves being in a car a lot just unbearable. Um, but I would love to see more of the country. I, I, I wish I'd had a chance to see more. I didn't go to get to see the big church in the centre or the statue of Leif Erikson. I didn't get a chance to go to the Saga Museum. We saw the Northern Lights, but they were very low on the scale. So I would love to see them better. We didn't get a chance to go to the famous hot dog stand. So there's lots of things still to do in Iceland that I'd love to see that I just didn't get a chance to do. So it is a highly recommended travel destination if you are interested in it. It was actually warmer there than it is here in England. And I think that is because where we live near the coast, so it's very windy and the wind just sort of adds to it. But yes, I highly recommend Iceland as a travel destination. It's a beautiful country. The people are lovely. They speak English fluently, but try and learn some, even if people are a bit weird about it. And if you're disabled, you've got to be a bit more prepared, I think. Um, if you have any specific questions about accessibility, if you want advice, if you're going to Iceland, you've got mobility problems and you want to ask something in particular, my email address is in the description. Please feel free to email me and ask anything that you want. Okay? So I want to thank you very much for tuning in to this live stream. Please remember to give me a like, thumbsy upsy, and a subscribe. Hopefully, I'll see you again next time.